In this section we'll be learning about the if statement in GML. The if statement essentially allows you to ask your game a question. This might be something such as seeing if the player's lives are at 0 or checking to see if a key is pressed. The if statement supplies the main structure of GML code. Using the if statement is fairly simple. You simply type if beginning the if statement. You then give the program a function or mathematical equation to check. Then you add an opening and closing curly brace between which you type the code to be executed if the statement returns true. Create a new object and then add a step event. Now drag in a code block. We're going to check to see if the player is holding down the right arrow key, and if they are, we will move the object to the right. Before we start, it is important to know what the step event is. The step event is an event that is executed once during every step in your game. By default, your game will run at 30 steps a second. This can be changed if needs be, but for now we will leave it at 30. Now you're probably wondering what a step is. A step is like each frame in an animation. During a step, all the sprites are drawn to the screen and any code in the step event or draw event is executed once. This is then repeated 30 times a second unless you have changed your room speed. With that being said, we are ready to type our if statement. On any line, type if, and then add a space. We are now going to use the keyboard check function to see if the right arrow key is being pressed. So type keyboard check, then add an opening and closing bracket. Now go in between these brackets and you can see that we need to supply a key argument so that it knows which key we want to check. There are multiple ways to type in which key you want to use. The first way is to type the key code. However, if you don't know the key codes, then don't worry. Type VK right. This is a built-in variable that holds the key code for the right arrow key. There are also variables like that for the up, left, and down arrow keys. Simply replace right with left, up, or down. With this typed, we are ready to give our if statement some structure. We need to add an opening and closing curly brace. You don't need to put them on separate lines, but it makes it easier to read later on. The opening and closing curly braces are where we will write our code that needs to be executed when the if statement returns true. If the if statement returns false, then anything inside of the curly braces will be skipped and the code will continue on to the next part. Now we have our if statement set out, we need to give it something to do when it returns true. We want to move the object to the right when the key is pressed, so we need to add a value to the x variable of this object which will move its position to the right. In between the curly braces, type x plus equals 4. Typing x plus equals 4 may be confusing and leave you wondering why it is typed in such a way. Typing x plus equals 4 is the same as typing x equals x plus 4. You are simply adding to the variable's current value instead of completely resetting it. This will move our object 4 pixels to the right while our key is pressed. Remember that this code is being run 30 times a second, which means our object will be moved 120 pixels to the right per second as long as we are holding down the right arrow key. If you want to move the object left, you should subtract 4 from the x variable instead of adding it. This is it for our if statement. As you can see, we start by checking if the key is being pressed. Then if it is, we add 4 to our x value, which moves our object to the right. Tick off the code, then create a simple sprite and add it to the object. Now place your object to the left side of a new or existing room. You may now run your game. If everything goes well, your object should move to the right when holding down the right arrow key. That's it for the if statement. You can put if statements inside other if statements if you want to check more than one thing before executing your code. This will require extra curly braces inside of the curly braces of the first if statement. You will see this as we begin to make the game. In this topic you'll learn about the if statement and how it can be used. You should now have a fair idea of how an if statement is used and be able to set up your own basic checks in GML. In the next topic we will learn about the for and while loops and how they can be used for data checking and input.